Hey friends, welcome back. Now this time we learn all about the selection pane in Power BI. Now at first, where is the selection pane and what can it do for us? Well, by default we don't see it. We see our report page, we see our visualizations pane in here, and we see our field list. Now if we go to View on the ribbon bar, we have the option to choose from the show panes the selection pane. So you can tick it, and you can also read through it. That's a great thing in Power BI, that it gives you additional information if you hover over it. So manage the visibility and layering order of objects in your report. And that's actually quite good in summarizing what it does. So let's click on it and let's have a look. The first option here, or the first pane, is the layer order, which is quite helpful because it allows us to specify. If you hover over the elements, you see the selection itself, but it allows us to specify the order of the elements. As an example, if I go to my report and select a visual, and I drag and drop it on top of another visual, like this one here, let me deselect it, you see that the donut chart here is still on top. Why is that? The reason is the layer order we have here, because here, the total sales by ship mode, the donut chart, this one, is on top of the bar chart, which is this one here. But I can easily swap this by simply click on it, and I can drag and drop it and place it on top of the donut chart. And if I do this, if I drop it here, you see that now so the bar chart is in front of the donut chart by default. I could also, of course, use here these options. So if I go down, then you see that now the donut chart is on top of the bar chart again. And that is why we see it by default, if I deselect the bar chart first, as you can see. So you can either use those buttons here, or you can drag and drop around the visuals. And the great thing here is really that if you hover over one of those, you know exactly the visual itself because it's highlighted with, in my case, white border around it. The second option we have here is we can click on the eye itself, because the eye allows us to show or hide the visual. This is especially helpful if you combine it with bookmarks, which can save the state of the visuals. But if I, as an example, click on the eye, for instance, for, let's say, the donut chart here, if I tick this option, you see that now the eye is crossed out and the visual is not visible by default. So that's what this eye is for. As I said, this is helpful if you configure bookmarks in your report and want to save states, so make it visible or not, based on, for instance, the triggering of a button, anything like that. You can also click on the three dots here, which allows you to group or summarize. Currently, the grouping and summarizing is grayed out. Grouping is kind of helpful, especially if you have a lot of different kinds of objects on your report page. Could be buttons, could be filters, or visuals in our case. Then you can easily click, for instance, on two of the visuals, like let's say this one and this one. I hold my control key, now I've selected both of them. You can see it, they are selected. And now if I click on the three dots on one of them, I have the option to group them together. And if I do this, if I click on the group, now they are actually here as a group, and I can then click on the group and select both, and I can drag and drop them around if I want to do that. So as I said, if you have a lot of visuals and you want to combine some of them, it makes sense to group them. Also, just in case you don't know it, you can easily rename it. You can simply double click on the group itself and give it a proper name, which makes it easier for yourself and also maybe for your colleagues to understand what actually is this group. Even though, of course, you can always click on the little down arrow here and then see what's inside the group. But still, I prefer to give it a proper naming. It's easier to spot. The last thing I'd like to add here is within the selection, we also have this tab order pane. If you tick this option, then you see the current tab order of the elements. Again, you see the elements if you hover over them. So what does this mean? Why is this interesting? Well, if people, or in this case viewers, want to consume your report, which you have published, then sometimes they, instead of using their mouse, they prefer using their keyboard. And for the keyboard, you can press the tab key, and the tab key allows you to jump from one visual to another one. However, sometimes the order of the tabs is kind of confusing for end consumers. Because as an example, if I take one of the visuals, let's say starting in my report here, if I press my tab key, you see that the first selected visual is this one. If I press my tab key again, then I jump to, in this case, the bar chart. If I press again, I jump to the customer country, and finally I jump to, in this case, my total profit by customer. Oh, sorry, the second one was the donut chart. They were just overlapping. But the order itself is not really perfect if someone wants to jump using his tab or her tab key. And this is where you can specify the tab order here in the tab order pane. Because I can easily, let me drag this maybe again to the side, maybe place it here. Okay, so we got this. And now I could say, well, I want to start up here. Or let's say actually start with don't want to start here. I want to start with my map. So I will use this one, and I can drag this as the first element. Then I want to switch to the KPIs, that's fine. Then I will start or go down to the left side, so I drag this on top. Then I go to the ship mode, and the text box itself, yeah, depends. I mean, you can place it also on top, it could also be fine, maybe that's a better option. But you can specify, the main point is you can specify the tab order. You can also use, of course, the arrows here. But now, if someone enters your report and consume it, and he or she press the tab key, you see we start up there. I press the tab key again, I go to the map, press it again, go to the KPIs, then I go to the bars, and finally to my donut chart. And this, of course, it's much more user-friendly. And this is where this tab order actually makes sense. So to specify this, so your report consumers really have a proper navigation using their keyboard. The final and last tip for every one of you who also watched the video to the end comes now, which is something which I did not find immediately, and I was really, well, kind of confused why it does not exist. You probably see that for panes like the visualization pane and the fields pane, you have this little arrow here to the side, which allows you to shrink the pane and also enlarge it again. So the same is true for the field list, for instance. But this is not available here in the selection. So I was kind of confused because I thought, okay, well, obviously I need to close it if I want to have a little bit more space for my report. Because if you have a lot of, well, tabs open here, then of course the report is really tiny on the left side. So that's why I prefer to not have too many tabs open, or at least shrink them. But I didn't find the button here. So that's why I thought, okay, well, I need to close it like that. And if I want to then change something in the selection pane, I need to go to the view option here and click the selection again. Now, of course, you can do this, but then I found out, well, let's give this a try. Let's click on the selection pane itself. And you see, if you hover over it, there is a little hint here, show hide pane. But still, I don't think this is really intuitive. At least it wasn't to me. So maybe it was easier to find for you. But in case you don't know this, you don't know that you can simply click on it and you see that it's shrinked, and of course then you can expand it anytime. But it's a little bit different because you don't see the arrow if it's here in the visual. So tick it, and then it's small, and it's much easier, then you can work on it. You can also use the other tabs, and if you want to have it again, simply then extend it again and do your transformations and changes here. Okay, so that's it. So that's all about the selection pane you need to know, and next time we might have a look at a different specific pane in Power BI or something else. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and if you haven't done so far, please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to me, and also I will deliver additional videos and tips for you to be the best kind of Power BI expert you can be. So that's it. Thanks a lot, and see you next video. Until then, best guys.